Um, do you want people muted, Alan?
No, I don't mind hearing comments.
Okay. All right, we are live. Go ahead. You are on, Alan.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today on this wood turning demo. And my name is Alan Russo. I work at the Pittsboro Senior Center for Chatham County Council on Aging. Yeah, I forgot who I worked for. Sorry. And so wood turning is just a hobby of mine, and we thought we'd get this together to do some demos to keep people occupied a little bit, I guess, during this crisis that we're having. So I'm glad to see everybody here. Thanks for coming. And before we get started, I do want to show you remember last week what we were working on?
Yes.
So I finished the box. Let's see if I get that close.
Yeah.
So I finished the box, and it's the wood is just beautiful. It's ambrosia maple. But of course, the real tricky part was what we did with the top, right? Was beautiful. The inlay with the
awesome.
two. So it turned out that I really did a poor job putting the rings on. And this happens a lot when I'm doing demos. I try to rush things. But so when I went to level the top of the box, there were some spaces in between the rings. So what I did was I took a piece of black walnut and I cut it with the bandsaw and a fine blade, and I collected the sawdust. I mixed it with some glue and I stuck it in there. And I'm gonna bring it real close. I don't know if you guys could see that, but it looks pretty good, right?
It's
it does look good.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with this box. There's the inside. The top is maybe just a touch loose. Well, actually, you know what? If you could turn it upside down and it doesn't fall off, it's good enough. Good. Yeah. So the other thing that's really cool about this, try to bring it here. What you do is when you put the top on, you try to, let's see if I can find it. Here we go. Here we go. You try to line up the grain, and it looks like one continuous piece. So I'm actually, let's see if you can see that. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually this piece of grain right here. So it looks like it flows, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So any questions on the box?
No.
As you turn, Alan, how did you turn it?
The box?
How'd you turn the bottom?
Oh, the bottom?
Yeah, no. Do you have a 4-inch lathe that lets you spin that?
Yes, that's what this is all about, and I'm gonna be showing you that in a minute.
Okay.
So I'm actually, all the stuff that we've been making on these demos, I've been putting on a shelf in my garage, and it's actually looking pretty cool. So I'm gonna put this back up on the shelf right now. We've been doing lots of things. So I believe the last time we left off, we were talking about doing a goblet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I did was I went to the wood pile this morning to find a piece of wood, and I think I'm going to try to work with this piece of cedar right here. Cedar's a pretty soft wood, and it should work really pretty easily. And so let's get started. So when you have a piece of rough wood like this, and I don't know if you can see this, but it has some cracks and stuff like that. If I put this on the lathe and I touch this with the tool, there's a chance that this piece will come flying off, which is dangerous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if we can get you guys down by the floor here. I'm going to take split this off. Like that piece probably would have come flying off the lathe and hit me in the head, which we don't want to happen. And we know what's that?
Action adventure.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I can't tell you how many times stuff like that has happened.
I bet.
So now we're actually going to take, obviously, we're going to make a circle in the center right here. And you really don't even need this part right here. So I'm going to see if I can, you know what, I want to get a better hammer than that. This one I thought I had all the stuff I needed. So I'm going to take off these little corners right here. It just makes things a little safer, a little bit easier. And what's nice about cedar, can you guys still see that? Am I in the frame?
You're good.
Okay. What's nice about cedar, most of the time it's pretty straight grained. So you could just do that and it cuts right off. That's why they used to make shingles out of cedar. One of the reasons anyway. So there we go. There's the piece of wood I'm going to work with, and it's a lot rounder than it was before, which makes it a little bit safer and a little bit easier to turn. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to guesstimate where about the center of this is. And I'm going to use my spur drive. Jam that in real good. And we're going to put it up to the lathe. So let's bring this back up. Get a little bit closer. Try to pull this a little bit down to the side. A little bit. There we go. I think that should work. So I like to keep my chuck on the lathe, and I actually put my spur drive right into the chuck rather than constantly having to change it and take it off and put it on. So I'll tighten that down, bring up the tailstock. And again, we're just going to guesstimate where the center is. One of the ways to guesstimate pretty accurately is you get on the end of the lathe and you look down the center and you see where you are. And I can see that needs to go a little bit to the left. Hold on. I have to unlock that. Then I turn it about 90 degrees and I could see that the point is a little bit to that side. So I take it and I move it a little bit to the left. And for what I'm doing right now, that's close enough to the center. Crank it down so it holds on really well and tighten everything. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of all this bark and make it round. So we don't want to turn the lathe on yet. We bring the tool rest as close as we can, and we turn it by hand. And you see how that's hitting?
Mm-hmm.
If I would have turned the lathe on right away, that would have hit the tool rest and either broke off or stalled the lathe. And that's just an unsafe thing to do. It's always a good idea to turn it by hand first, just to make sure it's not hitting. Lock everything down, and then we could turn the lathe on. Let me get my safety glasses on. And this is nice and tight. That's nice and tight. We're ready to go. Of course, I need to turn the electricity on. Here we go. I'm going to use this tool right here. It's called a roughing gouge. And basically, this tool is made specifically just to take all of this stuff off and to get yourself a round, they call it a billet. Okay, so let's work on that real quick. And one of the things about using these tools, especially when you're working on a billet like this, you always want to ride off the end. You never want to come in this way, because if your tool isn't set right, you're actually going to grab the end of that and it's going to break the piece of wood, or you get a really bad catch. So you always want to ride off the end. And when you're working on this side, you go this direction. You don't want to come in this way. I'm just going to turn up the speed a little bit so we can get past this, get this done really quickly. I don't know if you remember from the last couple of times we talked about when you to test this. Of course, you could turn the lathe off and take a look to see if it's round. I can see I have a spot right here that's not round yet. But there's another thing you could do. One is if you put your thumb on here like this, you can feel how smooth it is. And right here, you can actually feel it. You can't see it on the video, but my thumb is actually bouncing. The other thing you can do to test if it's round, you take the bottom of the tool and you lay it on there like that. See how smooth it sounds? But here,
Yes.
it's bouncing.
David Overhouse has a screen for a half hour at either 2 or 4:30. The governor's coming on at 2.
4:30, fine with me.
Put it down
I
again.
haven't touched my teeth.
Just a half hour.
Yeah.
I'll answer him back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, somebody asked.
Well, it's okay. I just came down for a minute.
I hear some voices. Is anybody asking a question? I'm sorry.
I don't think so, Alan. I
Okay,
think it was just background.
Got it. So what I need to do is I need to make a tenon on the end of this so we could hold this in the chuck. Because when you're working on the end, you can't have this tailstock in the way. So we're going to have to move that out. If I moved it away now, this would just fall. So we need to make a tenon on the end. And I use this tool right here. It's basically just a big giant parting tool. Now let me move this. You know, I've been talking about doing these tenons all the time, but I'm not sure that you guys could ever see what I'm doing. So I'll do this lefty now. So what this is called a tenon, and I'm actually going to use this to hold into the chuck. So I also need to straighten this out a little bit. It's a little bumpy on the bottom. And also have to make this sort of a dovetail shape because the chuck that I use is dovetail shaped. So that should be good enough. Now we take away the tailstock because we don't need this right now anymore. And lock the headstock in and take this spur drive out. And I'm going to move the camera back around this way because it's kind of in my way. Right there. Now, I'm thinking that this, well, you know what? Let's try it. This might be too long. So we put that there and we tighten this down as tight as we can to hold that in place. And now you can see that this is not going to fall in this direction. But the further away you get from the chuck, the more torque you have on the end of your piece. So we're going to try this. And if it's, you know what, I'm actually going to cut this down a little bit because I need to actually take away, I need to make this perpendicular. So I'm going to bring the tailstock up again, just real quick. As you can see, when you wood turning, you're always kind of problem solving. You know, when something doesn't look right, you try to figure out what to do to make it safe or to do it right. So this is kind of wobbly and there's really bad grain at the end here. So I'm going to actually cut that off. And I'm going to come in with my smaller parting tool. I'm almost at the bottom, so I want to pull my tailstock away so it doesn't jam. And there we go. That's fun. So now we have an end that's actually perpendicular to the flat part of the billet. So now we have to work on the end. And this is actually a little too big in diameter for a goblet, in my opinion. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit more. I'm going to get the roughing gouge, make the diameter a little bit smaller. right, I think that's a pretty good starting point. Now, as you know, you could, when you think about goblet, you could basically think of a glass, you know, like a stemmed glass, like a wine glass or something like that. So the part that the liquid goes in is going to be at this end, and this is where the bottom is, and this is where the stem is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to work on this part first. And the reason I do that, one of the reasons is I don't take this wood away, is you need the bulk of the wood to hold this while you're working on the end. So I'm going to take away my tailstock now. And I'm going to do it. I'm just going to guesstimate that that's about how deep the bowl, I don't know, what do you call it? What do you call the part of a glass that you put stuff in?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's like the glass part. I don't know. The liquid holding end. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna start by drilling this just a little bit. And you notice I put a piece of tape there, so I know I don't go too deep. I try to find the center. Usually I make the center point, but that should be good enough. And I basically just bore in there. Now that I reach the tape, I know I'm deep enough. And that does a couple of things. It gives me a place to start with my tools, and it also gives me a depth. I know once I get to the bottom of that hole, I'm in a good position, or that's as deep as I want to go. So let's up here, make this nice and tight. And I was originally going to drill this out, but I think since this is a wood turning demonstration, I should really go in there with some tools and actually turn it away. Let me see if I can bring this down a little bit so you guys can see. I know it's a little bit sideways, but I don't want the camera in the way. So this is making a lot of fine dust, guys. I'm going to put my dust mask on, and let me know if it. Can you guys hear me with the dust mask on?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
But the other, you know what? Hold on a second. I actually just turned the fan on, so maybe it makes more sense. Maybe it makes more sense to put the fan on instead of using the mask. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm making a small bowl. So I like to go in and actually pull out. Right now, I'm keeping the edge. I'm keeping it thick because I'm really still not sure of what I want this to look like in the end. The reason the tool is bouncing is because this is actually a wider diameter than that hole that I made. So I'm going to go get a smaller gouge. Because this is smaller, it's thinner. It flexes a lot more. So what I'm going to see if this will work. I'm almost at the bottom. Yeah, the reason this is so noisy is because I'm leaning over the tool rest so much, and this is really a thin piece of metal. It's actually flexing when it hits the wood. It's actually bouncing and vibrating. All right, I'm going to try to set the camera up so you guys can see inside there a little bit. See if this is helpful at all. Nah, it's not working. You know what? I think we could actually do a zoom on here. Let me see if this works. No, I can't zoom it. Sorry. So I want to turn this off just so I can get a better look. I'm going to turn this light on for a second, guys. I know it's going to be a little bright, but I need to be able to see what I'm doing in there. Let me,
It's okay, Alan.
I'm going to pull the light a little further away so it doesn't make too high.
That's
Are you guys
very-
able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in there with a scraper and modify the bottom. Because right now it's a little conical shaped. And since this tool is bouncing so much, I'm going to try to go in there with a scraper and see if I can get a better look on this. Usually when you use a scraper, you want to point the scraper down. So I just raised the tool rest a little bit. There we go. Now it's cutting much. Get some of that sawdust out of there. So this is the part of the goblet, obviously, that the liquid goes in. And I just want to straighten up. I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to straighten up the inside, the edge. It's kind of a bouncy, got a big bump right there. You never stick your finger in there while the lathe's turning. So that's actually pretty good. That's good enough for demo. So now what I want to do is I want to mark on the outside how deep that is. So I'm going to take my little gauge here so it reaches the bottom and then mark it on the outside just to get an idea where the bottom is. All right, so I went, that's a pretty tall glass looking thing. I guess I should have got my goblet. I should have got goblet nomenclature better before I started doing this. So what I'm going to actually mark this so I know where it is with the pencil. So now I could start to shape it to get an idea of what I want it to look like. I don't want it to be bump, bump, and like kind of square. I want it to be kind of rounded a little bit. So I'm going to, let me move the camera around this way again so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right. So let's get just a little bit of a shape on this. And this is one of the reasons why I left this thick, because I was most likely going to change the shape a little bit. And the other thing is the rim of a glass should actually be pretty thin. So if you're actually going to use it for drinking out of it, you don't have this big fat thing in your mouth. All right, so now I'm going to work on the shape going in this direction. I wish you guys could smell this. This cedar is unbelievable. So I'm going to start getting down to the part where we're going to make the stem. So this needs to actually start to come in. All right, so I lost my line, so I want to make sure I don't go too deep. I'm going to finish shaping that in a little bit, but I need some reference here, so. Turn a bunch of this away. So now I can start to get in there and start to shape this a little bit. You know what? I'm gonna bring the camera around this side so you guys can see what I'm working on. What I really need is an assistant because now the camera's in my way. But plus, I don't turn lefty very well. Hey, Lynette, I need an assistant. Can you scoot over here?
Yeah, sure will. You know what's so funny? I was about to say, maybe next time I'll come be your assistant.
Okay. So now before I take away too much mass at this end, I want to make sure that I pretty much am done with the shape of this. Because when there's only a little thin stem holding this, I don't want to go back to this wood or to this part of the goblet, because if I get a small catch, it'll just break, basically. So I'm pretty happy with that basic shape. So I'm gonna just smooth it out a little bit. And I'll go back in, since cedar is very soft, I can actually shape this a little bit with the sandpaper, believe it or not, to make sure it's exactly the way I want it. So I'm gonna move this over a little bit again. There we go. So now I want to start getting down to the stem. And you know what? I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. If you give me a second, I'm gonna bring what do you call that thing? Oh, tailstock, sorry. I'm gonna bring the tailstock back up, and even though this is pretty stable, it's always a good idea to support your work as best you can. And I just need to get a tool out of here. Sorry for the dead airspace, guys. I actually thought about that I was going to need this before, but I forgot to get it. So what I'm going to do is I want this cone to be in here to hold it in place. So I just need to get the little gadget-majigger that goes in there. Hey, that's a wood turning term. Gadget-majigger.
I liked it.
Believe me, there are actually names for all of this stuff, and I don't really know them all the time. Oh, guess what? I just put this in upside down. Uh-oh. You know what? It should still work. I don't know who the guy was who invented Allen wrenches, but I wonder if his name was Allen.
I bet it was.
Right. So that's going to go in there, and I'm not going to tighten this down a real lot, but I just want it as a little bit extra. So now when I'm working in the center, I don't have to worry about this. All right, let's get back to shaping this. Let me see. Is that a little better for you guys? Let's see.
It's good.
Yeah, it's, you know what? It's too bright. Let's do this. Okay. So let's shape this a little bit better at the bottom. Now I'm gonna try something that I've only done once. And I don't know, Ken, are you on the call today? Is Ken out there on the call? So Ken was
No,
over here.
Ken didn't make it up here. Didn't make it on today.
Okay. So we were playing around one time, and he had seen somebody make what's called a captured ring. So we were kind of experimenting on it. We really didn't have the tools to do it, but I'm going to try it again just to show you guys, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm noticing this. Hopefully this crack here is not going to be all the way down into the center. We'll see what happens when we get down there. So let's get some of this out of the way. All right, I want to see what happens. Let's see if that crack is gone. Yeah, I think we're good. All right, so I'm just gonna start shaping this a little bit more. And I'm gonna get a smaller tool, because that big tool I can't really get in there very well to make it the way I want it. See, this tool is very skinny and it's far away from the piece of wood, so it keeps on doing that. Now, I really like making goblets, but my biggest problem is I'm not really a spindle turner, and I'm not really that good at coming up with designs for the handle. But we'll see what we can come up with here. Well, you know what? I'm going to try something else. Again, here we are, we run into a problem, so we got to try to figure out what we can do to fix it. I want to get in tight right in there. I have this tool. I have no idea what the name of it is, but I use it a lot for making decorations and stuff. But it looks like it might be good for what I'm doing right here. So I think that's probably a good start. Oops. See, when you do it wrong, the tool tells you you're not doing it right. Just like that. These tools don't like to go uphill. They only like to go downhill. So I'm going to start thinking about that captive ring. Now, the whole idea of you tying a captive ring is people go, wow, how'd you get that ring on there? Because the bottom and the top is going to be bigger than the ring. And it's almost like, I don't know, like a little puzzle piece. You could think of it that way. So I'm going to try this. Hopefully it works. We'll see how it goes. Now, I actually took this screwdriver right here and I modified it a while ago just to make beads. So I'm going to start with this and see how it goes. You know what? I'm not liking that I'm so far away from the... I'm going to change my tool rest to try to get in a little bit closer. It'll be a little safer. Let's see if this is helpful. Oops. There we go. The problem is that this tool rest is not tall enough. So again, just let me turn that to make sure that we're not hitting. So this has kind of a rounded shape on it, and hopefully I'm going to go in deep enough just to get rid of, just to make like a bead right here. So that's going to be my captive ring, and we'll finish it off. First we're going to do is get rid of a lot of this excess stuff right here. Okay. And I've got to get rid of on this side also. I'm actually going to go in with the parting tool to make this cut right here. So now what I have to do is I actually have to turn this into a ring and undercut it. And before I do that, I want to, because once this breaks away from the stem, I'm not going to be able to sand it. So I'm actually going to go in here, just do a little sanding on the outside. Just to start with. And now the trick is to undercut that and take the ring off. So I'm actually going to try to use this tool. I actually made this tool out of a screwdriver for something completely different than this, but I'm kind of hoping that it's going to work. And since cedar is so soft, I think it shouldn't be a problem. Basically just scraping away the outside of this. I'm going to try to go a little bit more than halfway underneath this for now. And then I'm going to come around the other side and try to do the same. Yeah, this tool is actually made to cut in this direction, so it's doing much better. There we go.
Bob dog.
So the ring is now, the ring is broken away from the stem. It's captured on here, and this is the captive ring right here. So when people look at it, they're going to be like, how did you get that ring on there if this is so big?
Yeah.
Got the idea?
Yeah.
I can see I didn't do a really good job of sanding, but I think you got the idea. So now we could basically finish the stem, and we could just, let me make this a little bit smaller at this end so I could get that ring out of the way. So now the whole idea is to try to make a pleasing shape for the stem. Now it could be just a sort of an oblong shape, and I just think I might just do that. You can make all kinds of fancy whatever you want there. These guys who do a lot of spindle turning, they come up with these fancy designs that they can put in. Now that ring's getting annoying, it's in the way. Get over there, you. So one of the things I've always had trouble with as far as design is the transition between the stem and the base. I never seem to come up with what I consider a pleasing transition, but we'll see what we can come up with here. Oops. So I'm thinking like the base is going to be way down at the bottom here. Yeah, that little ring has a mind of its own.
Can you put a piece of tape on it at the top and just hold it in place?
Let me turn that off. I'm sorry, say again?
I said, can you take a piece of tape and tape it up there at the top just to hold it in place until you, like masking tape or something?
You're right. Actually, you see this piece
Yeah,
of tape I have right here?
yeah,
That was my original plan. Completely forgot until you said that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Let's see if it works.
Yeah, maybe you won't have to deal with it.
Man, you're smart, Lynette.
Sometimes.
All right, I'm going to try to get this in a little bit closer. Because I almost just broke my finger before when that thing caught. I went off the tool rest, which is like a big no-no. Yeah, well, I don't know. Let's I'm gonna get a pencil and try to get an idea. Like that's my base right there, and I think the base is actually big. So I'm gonna cut this down a little bit. It's like it's too big diameter for the size of this.
Yeah.
You know, make these goblets all the time. Like they have proportions, mathematical proportions that they use. I just kind of do it by eye, but I can't. Yeah, that's a little too big. So let's get that a little bit smaller. There, and so I'm gonna actually part this off right about there because I don't want the base to be too thick. So now let me refine the shape if I can with this tool. For some reason I don't really do very well with that little tool always catches on me. All right, so I'm gonna start to part this just to get an idea what we're looking at here. I don't want to take it all the way off because now what I need to do is sand. So we'll pull this out of the way. Now, I will put my dust mask on for this because this makes really, really fine sawdust. And I'm going to start with some 100 grit. Actually, let's get this out of the way completely. Try to smooth up the inside a little bit. But I'm not going to go crazy because it's a demo. You guys get the idea. Come around and start working on the outside. I'm not real happy with it. In here and try to fix it. See if I could do this without ruining everything. Yeah, it's a little bit better. But let's see. It's out of the way. Now, like I said, I'm just going to do a basic sanding real quick with this. And as I'm sanding, I can feel this bouncing. Let's see. I have a crack right here. The problem is if I go deeper than that crack, it's only going to have a really small base. And I don't think that's a good idea. So I'm going to leave it. It'll just be a little imperfection. So the only way that you could actually sand this ring is to do it by hand. And let's see. There we go. So let me try to blow off some of this sawdust. And because now I actually really like looking at my computer. Oh, there we go. Okay. Can everybody still see?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because my computer just went a little freaky and the video went away. I really love
No, it
cedar.
still looks good.
Okay. So I'm just going to do some beeswax and oil on this as a finish. And I like the beeswax and oil because it's food safe and you could actually use this to drink out of. But what I don't like about it is it's actually going to muddy up the white on this and it won't be really as high contrast. But if we're not making it to be beautiful, we're making it to be utilitarian. Let's see what we can do. The reason I'm keeping this turning is what happens is the beeswax and oil is kind of solid right now. But when I hit this and it's turning, the friction actually melts it and it gets absorbed into the piece, into the wood a lot better, which I'm not going to be able to do with this ring, obviously. I'll do that later. All right, that's good enough for now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to part it off. And this tool right here is called a parting tool. And what I mean by parting it off is basically just cut it away from the main piece of wood. Now I don't want to go straight in. I'm going to go on a slight angle this way. Because I want it, when it sits, I want it to sit on the edge. It'll sit flat. So now that I'm getting close to the bottom, I'm going to grab the piece around from this side. And if you ever do some wood turning and you're doing this, make sure you don't have a sleeve or something hanging in there that can get caught.
Call from Chatham Justice. Call from Chatham Justice.
All right, so there we go, guys.
Yeah.
Goblet with a captured ring.
It's great.
Peter. And except for that little mess up right there in the piece of wood, I think it came out pretty good. And I like the fact that the rim is really thin and you could actually use this to drink out of. So there we have it.
It's
I will
very
have to take this. I will have to take this little nub off because it's not sitting flat, and I'll basically take that off and sand it. How are we doing on time, Jackie?
Oh, you can hear me. It's about
Yeah.
5 minutes of 11. So it's up to you how much longer you want to go. Ken made it on. Morning, Ken.
Good morning. How you doing? It's not my fault. I'm not old and forgetful. It's my wife's fault.
Yeah.
Sure.
okay,
Alan
my
got a
wife-
kick out of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
my wife is nowhere in the area of Pittsburgh, so I guess I have to blame it on myself.
There you go.
Well, thanks for stopping by, Ken. We're done.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh man.
So,
But it is recorded on
basically-
YouTube if you want to watch it. So
Well,
don't feel like you
I
completely missed out.
definitely will, and that's a gorgeous little ring on that goblet. That's cool.
How do you get this, Mark? How do you get those the past YouTube videos?
The past YouTube videos, if you go to our website and go to the virtual programming, which is, you get there by going to the white house with the red roof on our main page. And if you scroll through there, you should be able to find all our old videos.
Great. Good job, Alan. This is Mark.
Hey, thanks, man.
Yeah, nice
So
job.
Thanks. So the only thing I really don't like about this goblet, looking at it now, is I think the base is too thick. But hey, it'll still work, you know. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Yes. No.
All right. I mean, you know, if you see anything else, we have a couple of minutes.
Was your cedar green or had it been cut for a little while, Alan?
It's pretty dry.
Okay.
Yeah, I got this from somebody who was throwing out a bunch of wood, and I actually went to the wood pile this morning looking to figure out what I was going to do, and I saw this there, and yeah, it seemed pretty dry. And when you do stuff like goblets and boxes, you really should use dry wood because you don't want it to, as it's drying, you don't want it to warp, especially if you spend a lot of time and make a really thin,
Yeah.
If it's a really thin stem and it just warps just an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch, it's really going to show up and you're not going to like that. So,
Very pretty.
all right, guys, if nobody has any more questions, I don't know if you could think of anything that you want to see real quick or you have any questions about general wood turning.
That was one,
So-
that was one of the best jobs I've ever seen you do, Alan.
Yeah, it's good. That's good you didn't see it.
You didn't fall for it, Alan.
Ah, geez.
All right.
So that pull us away. So I guess that brings us to, what do you guys think you want to see for next week? Time.
Have you got anything that takes like 30 seconds? Because I only joined for the last 30 seconds.
So a couple of other things we've talked about. One was Christmas ornaments. So I guess we could actually get a little closer to Christmas to do those. One of the things I was thinking about is making a square box. Think is that interesting to anybody at all?
I would really like to see it.
You know, when you think about wood turning, you always think about things that are round.
Yeah.
Actually make things that are square on a lathe. They're actually very interesting. When you turn something square, it ends up having what looks like 4 legs holding the box up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I'd really like to
But,
see that, Alan, if you can do it.
Yeah, we could do that. And or if you guys think of anything else that you want to see that we could work on, send me an email or come up with something. Give me a call.
Whatever you do, I will enjoy it.
Well, it looks like it's about 11 o'clock, so we actually got done on time this time.
I know.
I think it's the first time.
There you
All right, guys,
go.
well, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.
Thank you.